A new version of the RetroBit Wireless Tribute 64? Well, I've gotta check this out. It's no secret that I have been a huge fan of the RetroBit Wireless Tribute 64 since it launched in June 2021. Being the only third-party controller option for the N64 that offers both rumble and memory pack capabilities makes it stand out among the competition. This, combined with good overall performance and analog stick ranges close enough to the original N64 ranges, puts the pad into a league of its own. And it has remained my go-to for the last 19 months. Using the controller for N64 Emulation to get a close experience to what it offered on real hardware was also a huge plus. But with the part shortage that has hit the tech world over the last few years, RetroBit has had to design a new version of the Wireless Tribute 64 to keep the supply for the pad flowing. Christened with a new V2 subheading, these new versions of the Wireless Tribute look to improve upon their predecessor in some meaningful ways, including lower latency and possibilities for expanded use in the future with continued firmware updates. But the main question in my mind since opening my V2 Wireless Tribute 64 is, how does it stack up to the original Wireless Tribute 64? In a bout of heavy FOMO, I decided to pick up one of the limited edition skeleton V2 Wireless Tribute 64s from Castlemania Games. Upon receiving the controller, it is plain to see that it retains the same packaging as the originals. To differentiate between the old versions of the controller and the new ones, RetroBit has added a V2 under the controller's title that will be present on each new model. The box does a good job of conveying its contents, and the limited edition packaging stands out on a shelf. Inside you will find your controller, receivers for N64 and USB, USB-C charging cable, and an instruction manual. Taking a closer look at the controller, it is again identical to the original release from a surface inspection. The redesigned ergonomics and button placements that mark the improvements of the Wireless Tribute over its wired counterpart are still present, and even after 19 months, a welcomed sight. A few limited edition colors have been released since I originally reviewed the Wireless Tribute, and this new skeleton edition is a sight to behold with its transparent shell and buttons. As cool as it looks, I am far happier to see that each face and shoulder button and the D-pad retain their solid feel. The analog stick with its large thumb cap likewise maintains its good resistance and grip. The overall build quality is as formidable as before, with strong plastics ready to hold up against all but the heaviest abuse. It will still be on the lighter side for anyone who prefers a heavier pad though. The receivers for the V2 also remain nearly identical, with the only distinction being a V2 printed on the receivers. Answering the original question of how the V2 Tribute stacks up in actual gameplay compared to the original release has ended with interesting results. Diving into testing, I was hoping for like-for-like performance or to see the V2 exceed the original in every regard. And for nearly every test, it succeeds in that goal. Let's start by discussing using the controller on real N64 hardware, as I am sure that is what many of you are looking to pick it up for in the first place. First, the V2's promise of reducing input latency is certainly achieved. In the year and a half plus of using the original Wireless Tribute, I never once had any complaints about its latency. On day one of using the V2, the increased responsiveness was immediately noticeable. Going back and forth between the two has been quite the experience, to the point using the original Tribute feels off now. Thanks to this, each press of a button feels better than ever, and even more frame-sensitive actions should prove easier than ever. It might be a small thing, but certainly an important one, and a huge plus for the V2. Other functionalities that have come to the Tribute since my original review, like macros to swap the shoulder buttons, are present on the V2 by default. So, for anyone who hates the offset use of RNZ in most games, rejoice, as you can move them into a symmetrical alignment just by holding both buttons on the side you wish to swap for 5 seconds. The receiver also retains functionality for the N64 memory pack, allowing users to switch between it and the controller's rumble at will. You will still need to completely unplug the receiver from the N64 to change modes, but it still lets the V2 provide a full N64 experience not found on competing offerings. Well, except for transfer packs, but I doubt anyone would really want to attach the heavier device to a Tribute receiver in the first place. RetroBit has further refined the V2 analog stick to be more in line with real N64 ranges, making the absolute ranges on the X and Y axis closer to Nintendo's original. This results in a more natural feel and less sensitivity compared to the original model Wireless Tributes. One small setback, however, comes from the stick's diagonal ranges. They are slightly lower than the typical N64 range at a few points, which can result in a few gameplay hiccups depending on the title. In GoldenEye 007 and Perfect Dark, you will notice issues moving the camera properly while aiming. Flight games like Rogue Squadron or Star Fox likewise can suffer slower movement on the offending axis. Thankfully, the ranges aren't reduced enough to significantly affect most N64 titles. I picked up a second V2 wireless tribute to confirm if the diagonals were just a fluke in this particular unit, but the results remain consistent with my earlier tests. On a brighter note, the stick's dead zones and steppings remain well tuned, as you can see from the Super Mario 64 spin and movement test. In comparison, the original wireless tribute did have more extended ranges compared to the V2, resulting in added sensitivity, but its diagonals typically fell more in line with what the N64 expected, making this an interesting trade-off between the two models. But it only gets better from here. Moving over to the USB receiver sees the V2 take on an entirely new profile, and it is quite stellar. First off, users will be pleased to know that the USB receiver maintains all of the same compatibility as the original, allowing for use on any number of USB-equipped devices like PC, Steam Deck, phones, and the Nintendo Switch. The V2 uses all the same configuration settings on PC as the original tribute, making it easy to swap between them at will. It also is worth noting that both X input and direct input modes are still supported. If you are anything like me, your number one use case for this controller with USB is going to be for N64 Emulation. And holy crap, it is an incredible experience. With the Mupen 64 Plus Next Core and RetroArch, setting your controls to match that of an N64 controller is a quick process, and once finished, you are treated to an experience that almost perfectly matches that of the original Nintendo N64 controller in terms of functionality, complete with rumble support. Whether you like the old 3-prong or modern 2-handle styles is a whole other debate entirely. But I digress. The improved latency of the V2 is once again at play with the USB receiver, making it ideal for emulation use. Loading up analog stick test programs in the emulator shows just how much better the V2 handles, with none of the hiccups experienced on real hardware to be found. Loading up each game that I took issue with on real hardware with the V2 resulted in a perfect experience in emulation. Interestingly enough, by comparison, the original wireless tributes actually featured significantly reduced ranges in emulation, resulting in the diagonal issues found on the V2 with real hardware. Now, there is still a quirk that is worth noting even when using the USB receiver with the V2. Depending on the direction you push the stick will change the way each diagonal behaves. I haven't noticed it affect in-game performance, but it is a possibility that it might in certain situations. I am happy to report that the dead zone and steppings once again behave well. There is now no better controller to use for N64 emulation when taking latency, performance, and feel into account than the RetroBit V2 Wireless Tribute 64. For any Switch users who play N64 titles using the Nintendo Switch Online N64 app, I am happy to report that results are similar to dedicated PC emulation. I refuse to say they are identical since there is no way to officially run an analog stick test through the app. But Mario 64, Sin and Punishment, and Star Fox make strong showcases for the stick's handling. The NSO 64 macro makes using the controller for the app quite easy as well, which is another plus. If desired, you can still use the V2 for any Switch title you wish, as it registers on the system as a Pro controller and features full remapping support. The All-Star macro will be your friend for any game that requires a second analog stick. Thanks to direct input, the V2 still functions on older operating systems like Windows 98, making it a perfect companion to this era of gaming. And thanks to improved latency, it is ideal to use over the original Tribute. While overall I am loving the V2 Tribute for its use with USB-equipped devices and N64 emulation, I can't say the experience on real N64 hardware went without issue. As I began my testing, the V2 Tribute gave me problems that resulted in most things being unplayable in some form. Diagonals practically didn't work at all, and it was only when I moved the system into another room to record the issue that it magically fixed itself. This wasn't confined to a single unit either, as both of my V2 samples behaved the same way. And now both are working fine with no sign of the previous issues to be found. A true oddity, so if you happen to encounter a similar problem, know that the solution is to unplug your system for a while to correct it. This leaves us with two answers to my original question. It outperforms the original wireless Tribute in every regard using the USB receiver. Its compatibility with any number of devices also gives it a ton of value. Unfortunately for fans of real hardware, you will be dealing with slight issues on the diagonal ranges in some titles. If you currently have an original wireless Tribute and utilizing N64 hardware is your main objective, the added sensitivity on the stick might continue to serve as an okay trade-off for working diagonals in titles affected by the V2's quirks. If you are a fan of N64 emulation, the V2 Tribute is king. Alright everybody, so that is the RetroBit V2 Wireless Tribute 64, and I gotta say that the testing process for this one has kind of driven me a little nutty, because I swear this thing was gaslighting me for at least 2.5 weeks, and then all of a sudden we have to cram in a whole new testing session because it worked as intended. So very strange stuff, but the controller is holding up solidly. Spent so many hours just in the last 2 days to verify everything that I have told you in this review. So I'm extremely happy with this controller and its use for USB devices and emulation. It is so good. On N64 hardware, I was ready to completely write it off, stick with the V1s, but then it started working very well. There are a couple of titles affected by diagonal ranges as mentioned, but overall should not really be noticeable in most other titles. But a solid update to the original V1s in most regards, just a little bit of a setback with that diagonal, but hopefully they can update the ranges with patches in the firmware, so chances are that'll probably be fixed up before we even know it, and this whole review will be rendered irrelevant. So good times, love it. That's one of the great things about video content. But check out the V2 Retrobit Wireless Tribute 64s. Castlevania Games will have them. Amazon, any other number of places that you get your retro input devices. So thank you so much as always for watching today's review. Hope you have found it informative. Helps you decide if you want to update to the V2 from your V1, or if you just want to pick up a V2 right off the bat. You should probably check out my original tribute review to get a more in-depth look at what the controller can offer you. But here at the end of the video, I do have a couple of huge favors to ask. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to hit that like, dislike button depending on how much you like this review, as well as that sub button and notification bell so you can see when new content goes live on the channel, because there's always new things coming, and I'd love to have each and every one of you along for the ride. And more streams coming that we're going to utilize this guy with, so be sure to follow the live channel for that as well. But if you'd like to further help support the channel, you can also check out that join button here on YouTube or the Patreon link in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Little goes a long way to keeping this place up and running and bringing this content to all of you. But big thank you to all of our current backers. You're amazing. Thank you so much for believing what we do here and helping us keep it going. You're champions, you're rock stars. We friggin' love you. But until next time, my wonderful internet peeps, you all stay awesome, keep on gaming, and we'll see you back next video.